Welcome to MarTalks, the #1 podcast for e-commerce and marketing applications. MarTalks is devoted to covering the latest technology developments that drive the global commerce ecosystem from advertising to last mile. Enjoy all of our content at rosensteingroup.com/MarTalks-podcast.
Welcome to MarTalks, where we discuss contemporary issues in the e-commerce economy. Today we're going to be speaking with Alex Hase of Mirakl. Marketplace is one of those areas of e-commerce that has really come into preeminence here over the last several years, particularly in the area of composable commerce. And Mirakl is the preeminent provider of marketplace solutions. So we're going to talk to Alex a bit about why they've been seeing so much success, what values retailers have experienced as a result of adopting marketplace solutions, and why everyone should have a marketplace in their backyard. Anyway, Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. This will be fun.
Well, we'll see about that. But before, we launch into this, I always afford my guests an opportunity to essentially defend their honor because they are appearing on this podcast. And I figured you should probably set the record straight with your story before we launch into Mirakl's.
Sure. Yeah. So just a little bit of background on myself. So I've been in software and software sales as a CRO and various different associated roles, going on about 25, 30 years now. Had joined my first startup when I was 28 years old and have huge entrepreneurial bones. So I've been a part of companies that have been pre-revenue, early stage revenue, ones that are in the hundreds of millions. And so organizations associated with that, very broad organizations of, hundreds of people that I've managed all the way down to startups where, it was just myself. And then we built a team around that. So I have a huge passion for that whole building process. As I said, sometimes that's early stage, sometimes it's late stage. And then I've been involved in a lot of different verticals from financial services, the pharma biotech space, and then spent most of my career in retail. And then roles have typically been CRO, where the responsibilities are heavy orientation around sales, client success, marketing, and partnerships. So I have a fair bit of experience in a lot of different areas, even reflecting back on when SaaS became a thing and explaining to people moving from on-premise to something that lives in the cloud, which was an interesting experience.
Wow. Yeah. Those early days where you needed a tractor trailer full of servers sitting in your basement
That's right.
to run a spreadsheet. Yes, we've come a little ways since then. We've come just a little ways. So any verticals that you absolutely will not ever deal with again?
No, I don't think so. I mean, for me, I love learning about new areas and new spaces. And I find that I've, even over my career, hopped orbits because I just love that learning experience. But I will say that retail and then my experience in pharma biotech were more interesting to me than financial services. But right opportunity, right place, and something that's interesting, I would dive back in.
Ding, ding, ding. Curiosity always wins. Curiosity always wins. If you're curious, you're going to be successful in enterprise software. That's just it. You got to be psyched about learning. Well, there's been a lot of news about Mirakl, especially recently. I mean, just let's recap. First up, Mirakl announced surpassing 10 billion in GMV, with over 100 million in sales just this last Black Friday. I mean, that's a humongous milestone for Mirakl. And how do you see it influencing the whole marketplace ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, I reflect on those numbers, and you just think about, and for those that are not aware, the company was founded about 13 years ago, and so obviously there's been a progression of growth from a startup. The company was essentially, the definer of the category of marketplaces that were not Amazon, and just getting to those thresholds, essentially just shows that it works. And again, the business model is taking, for the most part, existing retailers that want to take advantage of the marketplace model. So in combination with what they've historically done with their traditional e-commerce business, And achieving those types of numbers just reinforces that the model works. And frankly, we're seeing a lot of momentum with the realization that it is an opportunity for a lot of retailers that prior may have thought it wasn't something that fit into their strategy.
Well, yeah, I had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to interview Lisa Walsh, who was formerly the head of digital at, Party City, amongst others, but Restoration Hardware and a number of other luxury merchants. And we were also joined by Nat Pavic, who's Salesforce Commerce's product marketing leader. And we were talking about luxury a lot and
Yeah.
the need for better sustainability and re-commerce. But Mirakl actually has a really strong footprint in luxury. You work with retailers like Christian Louboutin and Bloomingdale's. I mean, why are those Lux guys and those upscale merchants picking Mirakl?
Well, so again, I guess a couple of things. One, I think we've built a great reputation over time. So one thing that I certainly observed when I joined the company about 2.5 years ago is that there was a great foundation of great brands. So you mentioned, Bloomingdale's as a retailer, Macy's was a customer, Nordstrom became a customer of ours about a year and a half ago. Whole bunch of European equivalents, but suffice to say, we were in that world of where some of the top retailers and brands associated with them existed. And so, given that we've been as successful as we have at kind of delivering on the potential value, I think that has just, built up the momentum and the flywheel of wanting to be associated with us. But even if I take, an example of, Bloomingdale's or Macy's, their whole strategy was really around trying to build relationships with brands that they didn't know and extend and have those brands that they were working with, where they were representative of more of the portfolio. In fact, Nordstrom, just shifting to Nordstrom for a second, their rationale was they wanted to be able to have those luxury brands be able to provide full expression of the brand. And so if you think about it, a couple of things happen. One, they're able to have that full assortment represented. And in this model of marketplace, the third party sellers of the brands actually are the ones that are doing the merchandising and the pricing. So one of the cool things for these luxury brands is that they end up having a level of control and making sure that all of the imagery and product description, whatnot, are all up to date and, current in conjunction with any campaigns that they're running. So we've just seen again, where this maturity element is what the driver was, but then it's just built on all these different organizations, both on the retail and the brand side, seeing how they can collaborate more effectively, ultimately delivering what the consumers want.
Well, are there any verticals that are kind of unexpected where Mirakl is seeing success? I mean, especially any that are selling vintage airline memorabilia or aviation related goods. I mean, just from anybody that would be curious about something like that.
Yeah, so I would say not unexpected necessarily. So you can, and I think you just started a couple of examples of the theme of how marketplaces can really exist in a lot of somewhat unique places. But I will share a couple of observations that I have seen in particular in the past 2 years, which is around the initial focus has been general merchandisers and department stores. And what has built from there is more of the vertical specialty retailers. So those that are focused on like consumer electronics or beauty or DIY home improvement, that those retailers have now seen how this fits into a strategy. And there's been a lot of momentum around that. So that's on the B2C side. And again, our company, we actually go to market with a B2C team and a B2B team, reason being that frankly, the language is different, the use cases are different and so on. But within B2B, there's some really unique examples. So in the food services industry, we have some very large customers that are leveraging the marketplace approach. There's a company that many people haven't heard of called Henry Schein. That's a huge distributor of medical and dental supplies. And they essentially, instead of just doing what they've always done, which is the rubber gloves and the dental devices, there's no reason that they can't expand into supplying everything that a dentist office might need. That's a sales opportunity for them, but it's also a service opportunity, and makes those that own these small dental offices their lives easier. So that would be an example of where I can't say that we said, hey, let's focus on one of the largest dental distributors in the world and see what happens. But lo and behold, they saw the opportunity, and I guess I would say many others are seeing where that potential lies as well.
Well, they are the biggest dental equipment wholesaler, but you also landed the biggest furniture distributor and a retailer in Mathis Home. And they found that the adoption of the retail ads was a major source of income for them, a major contributor to the bottom line. Macy's also seeing the adoption of a marketplace and the associated retail ad frontage contributing tremendously to their success. And what kind of lessons can other retailers or business to business merchants take from those new revenue streams?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and I guess I would characterize it as the clear understanding of how the different retail models play off of one another. And so what I mean by that is that marketplace, again, it's allowing third-party sellers to sell products and brands, and it's about expanded assortment and product availability and so on. But one of the other sides of the coin, so to speak, is retail media and the ability for retailers to maximize the potential there. And I think you see the likes of Amazon and Walmart and some other really large retailers taking advantage of retail media. And I think the smaller retailers were saying, well, does that really make sense for us? The reality of it is that in the current model of retail media, there's only a handful of companies, usually 10 or 20, that actually have the ability to buy ads on a e-commerce site. And so one of the big shifts that we are driving with our strategy is there's no reason that you cannot expand that inventory to be accessible by all brands and sellers that would like to participate in that advertising. And so Mathis is a perfect example of where they had implemented their marketplace, but then very quickly saw that a retail media strategy in conjunction with that was a great opportunity for them. And the other part that I think is really interesting that gets lost in all of this is, the conversation is always around dollars and opportunity to monetize. But the reality of it is a big winner in all of this is actually the consumers, because the consumers now actually see relevant ads either for things they're looking for or things that are complementary. And it's really the only opportunity for a brand to serve up these ideas and for a consumer to see them and, take advantage of that if they so desire. So from my perspective, everybody wins: the brand, the retailer, and the consumer.
It's almost like you're democratizing the advertising access by providing a marketplace. You're creating additional inventory for smaller brands, for niche brands to advertise on that the major media agencies can't dominate. So you're allowing those emerging or niche vendors a place to connect with their customers and again control that content and that brand image as they do it. But if you could you explain how retail media differs in the roles that it plays by vertical?
So I don't actually think it's too different actually from vertical to vertical. With I guess one significant exception, which is the number of participants on the demand side. So again, if I take the kind of ecosystem of a general merchandiser, they've got almost an exponential number of different brands and sellers and companies that may want to invest in that retail media. When you get into a more vertical specific retailer, then obviously that may narrow down, or limit the number of brands that, would be interested in making those investments. And I think furniture is even a good example of that as well. So long story short is there's still plenty of opportunity, but, for me, the the value proposition still exists from, one vertical to the next, and frankly are not too dissimilar, with the exception of what I just shared.
Well, with the emergence of marketplace in general, how do you see this technology transforming the retail media landscape for your customers?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to look at it is, there's all these different systems and all the different platforms where you're trying to manage everything from your product inventory, your merchandising, my ad buys, and they all sit in different places. And the way that we're looking at it is that within our platform, we have obviously the ability to participate in marketplaces. So again, across the Mirakl ecosystem and frankly extensions beyond that. We've added a dropship solution, so now you could actually manage all those relationships with your retailers in one place. And then in conjunction with that, in that same system and platform, you can make your media buys or your ad buys, and then be able to do all the performance analytics and manage what's working and what's not, all in one place. And so, from our perspective, it's that whole ease aspect of it, and there's a huge efficiency element of it. And then we've obviously, much like many other companies are investing, have invested in AI as an enabling mechanism to frankly make decisions easier and, improve on some of those investments that are made.
Oh, shocker. AI, it enters the conversation.
Yeah.
I could not have predicted that. AI is certainly making a big play in terms of being an add-on for existing technologies, because clearly, as we have discussed thus far, Mirakl is an over decade-old software and company, and this AI capability has been grafted onto it and is doing wonderful things. So, I mean, with one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of talk about within the AI community and retail is the rise of AI-powered agents. Essentially, individuals will have an agent that's going to do your shopping for you. They'll know what your preferences are, what events are coming up, where you're going out to dinner, how, who, they'll probably even know the profile, who your prospective date is, and be able to predict, okay, you really do not want to be wearing earth tones. This is definitely a print kind of person that you're going to want to impress. But anyway, the agent's going to be doing a lot of shopping for folks. And with the rise of those, how do you envision marketplaces adapting to this shift in buyer behavior?
Yeah, well, it's the picture you paint is an interesting one for sure. I mean, I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of change that comes with it, but I think it's going to be a bit of a long journey, and I don't think it's going to be as perfect as people would like to believe, and maybe in 20 years it will be. But I'll give you an example. Me personally, I tell my family, don't try to buy me a Christmas present. They think they know me. They think they know what I want, but they don't. So I
So I get
essentially see,
nothing. I get
yeah,
nothing now. I
yes,
have clues all over my office. Nothing. Nothing.
yeah, just a hug and a little peace and quiet is all I ask. But at any
There
rate,
you go.
my point being is that, I think that choice has always been something that we want when we're buying. The notion of, yes, there's some repeat buying, items. And if you think about subscriptions, there's a place for that for sure. And I do think it's going to make it much easier for some of the buying experiences to occur. But I guess a couple things that I would share. One, for me, it actually makes the notion of marketplaces that much more necessary. And I always think about things in the context of customer lifetime value. And in fact, I think it's not spoken about enough that we as consumers, we go to a place that we trust and that, we believe in their brand promise and their value proposition. And when we want what we want, if they have it, positive reinforcement, we've now got a more galvanized relationship in that experience. Or they end up not being able to deliver what I need. And then guess what? You go somewhere else. And in today's world, when you go somewhere else, you could be gone for a very, very long time, if not, potentially forever. And so when you think about this AI, AI agent generated shopping, you better make sure that you have everything that your consumer is going to want so that you're able to serve that up to them as an option based on that relationship that you have with them. So that's part one. The second of it is related to ads and retail media. That's where I think it gets a little bit more interesting because the path to purchase has now changed quite dramatically. And so instead
Yes.
of it being a multi-step process, getting to that point at which somebody, you know, to executes on that purchase, as you well know, it could take you right to a buy page of a product because it believes that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you want. And so how that manifests itself, I would love to say I fully understand, but I do think it's going to reshape how investment in things like ads is going to happen in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be very curious to see which agent models take preference because some are going to respond to ads, track ads, look at ads because of the loyalty component. A discount, a free shipping, good take it, whatever you want to provide your customers to add value to increase their experience. The agents presumably are going to want to save you money unless they're a dumb agent, which would be essentially probably what I'll end up with. I'll probably beta something that's going to bankrupt me even faster than I have been able to do myself. But I love to bring in the composable commerce ecosystem because I'm a believer. I think that going with fully composable digital commerce stacks is what smart retailers are doing and smart businesses are doing to future proof their businesses, to make them innovation engines to provide ever new, different, exciting experiences for their customers. And Mirakl has joined the largest industry group of composable commerce providers in the MACH Alliance. And kudos to that. Kudos to Adrian for doing that. I wanted to get your experience of how do you see composable and marketplace Mirakl's integration to composable as providing a seamless experience for their customers.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess a couple words worth noting there. One, if you think about it, the notion of composable is about taking, the best in breed or the selected pieces and being able to put them together and have them operate well together and deliver on the promise of doing something that's incrementally better than it was prior. And Mirakl essentially fits that for marketplace. So again, as I mentioned before, really our model is not to disintermediate or take away from an existing e-commerce experience. It's actually to complement it. And so our customers, when they're delivering their e-commerce experience, you'll just notice some small nuances about what's happening in the background. It'll be on the product page, like sold by and whatnot. But as a whole, it actually looks like a regular e-commerce transaction. And so I think we fit very nicely into that whole notion of composable. The second thing is, we have numerous implementations that have been done with composable companies, so the commerce tools of the world, and as we know, a lot of the longer standing e-com platforms have kind of reconfigured themselves to be more composable in nature. And again, we're up to 450 customers plus or minus, all with different variations of the different types of e-com platforms that exist, and frankly, even custom built. So we've built with that desire to be flexible and to kind of sleeve into these very unique circumstances that a lot of retailers have. And, many of them, as you know, are carrying a lot of legacy systems. So by definition, we've had to be flexible with, everything we've done around the APIs, building connectors and so on.
Well, I've mentioned it before. I'll mention it again. I'm a shopaholic, and it's what's really, since I bought my first pair of pants online in 1999. I've been suckered in. I can't get away, but I recognize a fellow junkie when I see one. And you fit the mold, dude. You fit the mold. So, I mean, what initially really got you into e-commerce, and what keeps you, passionate about at this point? This is your current role is leading Miracle's America's division, and I should add, I know Brian Callahan, your precursor there, very, very
Yeah.
well. Tremendous amount of respect for Brian. After many years, we were talking about this off camera, many years of working with him, supporting building his sales teams at Demandware. But, what's your deal, man? Why are you so fired up being there at Miracle?
Well, you nailed me with being a victim of e-commerce. So I do not go to stores anymore at all. And in fact, I overbuy and I probably return. The retailers are going to hate this, but I probably
oh,
return 80 or 90% of what I buy. But
oh,
I will tell you one of the big
oh,
shifts, and I want to ask you a question, but in observing the shift towards not having free shipping or not having free return shipping, it's changed my behavior. And so I'm
yeah.
actually fascinated by these nuances as you try to, both not allow people to do what I just described that I do, but also,
Mm-hmm.
drive towards profitability in an e-commerce world. So anyway, that's just me, riffing a little bit on some of what I've seen that again has, I think, pretty significant shifts in behavior. And speaking about me personally, but I guess to answer your question, so my whole e-commerce journey, interestingly enough, I've been in, as I mentioned, multiple different verticals. Most recently, heavily oriented around retail. A lot of it was, focused on data and analytics, so around POS inventory data, consumer purchase behavior. Again, I was always really fascinated by it, but got a phone call one day to have an exploratory conversation with a company called Flow Commerce that was in the cross-border e-commerce space. And long story short is loved what their objective was, and essentially, it's not. It's totally understandable that I could see what the potential was, based on all the momentum that was built in e-commerce. Take that into a cross-border concept, and it just made perfect sense to me. I had the good fortune of joining right when COVID began. And so we had the pleasure of the tailwinds that occurred. Obviously, a terrible
Mm-hmm.
event for the world in general, but as it related to e-commerce, obviously was a huge driving force. And so at that point, it just started to make this realization of what was taking a long time from an adoption standpoint and just accelerated the hell out of it. And so that company ended up getting bought by Global E, which is a public company. And
Mm-hmm.
there were two board members, one of whom I think is Tom Ebling, and another gentleman,
Mm-hmm.
Scott Friend, who are both on the
Mm-hmm.
board at Flow Commerce, also are on the board at Mirakl. And so they made an introduction. And what I absolutely love about this company is they just the notion of being such a strong category leader in this space that continues to progress and develop. And what we do is just incredibly intellectually stimulating. And by that, I mean, we have these very long journeys with companies that we've been educating them over the past 4, 5, 7, 8 years as they're trying to really understand how this marketplace concept fits into their strategy. And I have so many stories about companies that have told us what that intellectual journey was, but we're selling to the CEOs. We're engaging with board members of those, very, very large companies and really helping them wrap their heads around how this concept fits into what their strategy is. And so that could be another 2 hour long conversation, but it's pretty cool. It varies from one company to the next. Sometimes it's just, hey, it's a growth vector for us. Let's pursue it because purely from a growth standpoint. Others are, it's all about customer lifetime value. Others are, it's all about assortment. Others are all about SEO, or it's some combination of those things. And so for me, again, back to what I was commenting about being a pretty curious person, this has just been something that has been really enjoyable and challenging.
Well, you could have stopped at Tom Ebling and Scott Friend. I mean, they're just two, going
Yes.
back to Demandware, just two of the nicest guys in the biz, just absolute gentlemen. I had the incredibly good fortune of having Tom Ebling be the CEO of several of my clients, going back to Profit Logic back in the uh,
Yes.
early 2000s, and then lattice engines, and then Demandware. And when you've got a leader like that in charge of an organization, it makes the recruiter's job a hell of a lot easier. It really,
Agreed.
really does. But another thing I love about you is you're a startup veteran. You kind of, as you said in the beginning, you've been at the big ones and the little ones, and you weren't afraid of being the first seller, in addition to being the head of sales, where you're having to essentially, I'm going to invent the process. I'm going to invent the top of line. I'm going to invent the go to market. I'm going to pioneer the first sales pitch and get shot down 3 million times. And I'm going to, modify it 100 times in that process in order to get to one that doesn't get the phone hung up in the first 10 seconds. But I mean, in my 25 years of recruiting now for startups, and building that really high performing new business team, it's critical, obviously, to have that leader. What for you has been your biggest challenge and most rewarding experience in building your team there at Mirakl?
Yeah. Well, the challenges vary considerably. And I would say that in each one of the circumstances where I joined one of these companies, and again, at various stages of maturity, my approach has always been I just ask a ton of questions. And that's at the highest levels of the organizations to all the individual contributors. And, I get to the point of where I create hypotheses and then I pressure test those. But it's essentially being extremely inquisitive. And by contrast, there are some people that are in roles that I have that walk in with kind of a predetermined playbook, and they immediately just try to overlay that onto whatever situation that they roll into. I actually try to, go through that period of inquisition and then operate from first principles. Like, what is it that's actually going to, from an execution standpoint, improve upon existing state and what the objectives that have been set before me. And I'm also a huge efficiency buff. So, and you're going to love this, but one of the first things I do is, do we have a crystal clear target of which customers we want to pursue or which prospects we want to pursue? And in every situation I've been in, the answer's always been somewhat vague. And for me, it just doesn't make any sense, because every calorie of energy that we do as a business should be focused on a very clear direction. And then from that, you design your go-to-market, you start to build out a team that supports it, and there's various different models, inside, outside sales, how much technical sales engineering do you need, et cetera, et cetera. But then even, I think one of the hardest things is really just getting people that are as driven as I feel I am to try to help the business be successful. And that comes on an individual basis. You can't really teach that fire in the belly. And it's frankly my number one priority in hiring, because if you can take that fire in the belly, point people in the right direction, good things happen. But it's not something that can be taught. So I guess I would characterize my biggest challenge as being able to find enough of those right people that actually can help you drive the level of performance that's expected and possible.
Well, that's leading from the front. I mean, it's leading from the front, having that energy, having that inquisitiveness, having that curiosity. You seek it out in others. You can't instill it. You can't instill that fire. They have to have it. And great enterprise sales executives always have that fire, that inquisitiveness. And the most important one, the best ones always have it. How can I solve my customer's problem? How can I solve it? How can we map our solution to make them better at whatever they're doing? And if you find those people, you got a gem. You got a diamond in the rough. Well, I've heard it said that a sales leader, when they come into an organization, an existing organization with the team, if they in the first 30 days haven't either brought someone in new or fired somebody on their team, that they're too slow. What do you think of that in enterprise software sales?
I would not agree with that because that's driving an action without a purpose. And again, I guess even when I'm talking about my level of inquisition, I actually try to contextualize, even why there might be areas that are underperforming. So I essentially try to get to root cause. And examples of that, even if I just take on the sales rep level, is you have to actually look at, are they doing all the right things, but there's something that's actually not driving the performance? Are they
Mm,
actually somebody that, has all the potential, but for whatever reason is not representative? And I do think there are some people that just show up, look at the numbers, and it's ready, fire, aim. I just take a much different approach to it. So in short, if I see something that needs immediate change, by all means, I will make that change as quickly as I possibly can. However, I think to walk in with I have to take action because there's a perception issue if I go about it the wrong way, I just wouldn't subscribe to it. So if I thought it was the right thing to do, I would do it. If I didn't think it was the right thing to do, I wouldn't do it.
I couldn't agree more. Especially as you just mentioned, you come into half of these situations, you don't even know if the company has the right ideal customer profile in
That's
terms of
right.
who they're going after. You don't know if they've got the right product market fit. You don't know if they're telling their differentiation story the right way. You don't know if they've polled their customers to find out how their customers are succeeding or failing using their
That's right.
solution to know where they need to improve it. And that takes more than 30 days. And I've always found that, why shoot from the hip when you can take the time to extend and get a good bead on your target and then squeeze. You're
That's
always
right.
going to hit the mark then. You're going to hit the mark then when you take the time to aim. Um, well, looking forward, what excites you most about Mirakl and the journey that you're taking folks on there with Marketplace?
Well, I mean, again, it's been a hell of a ride. Even in the 2.5 years I've been here, the amount of change that we've gone through has been quite significant. Both organizationally and frankly, what we've done from a strategy standpoint. So again, if even 2.5 years ago, we were essentially a single product company. We were all about marketplace, and we built extensions off of that. So we've got a payout reconciliation solution so that you can manage the relationship with your sellers. We have a
Mm-hmm.
catalog onboarding tool that's AI driven, so it makes that process more efficient. They're essentially extensions of the same concept. But since then, we've actually made significant investments in other growth opportunities and, frankly, other products that I think are going to be big winners for us. And one of them we touched on. It's not the only one, but it's probably the one worth highlighting the most is related to retail media and ads. So, we placed that bet with an acquisition about 2 years ago of a personalization engine. The whole theme there was to make sure that all the ads that were being delivered, were personalized and relevant. And that has built up some great momentum, talking about Mathis Brothers as one example of that. So for me, it's been super exciting to see the company make really good decisions, fiscally responsible, but then also building on that with the strategy and saying, hey, what else can we do in addition to this business that we've been so successful at? And then even with, again, our core marketplace solution, we've just continued to innovate, make it better and better, and the moat keeps getting wider and wider. So it's really, I think of all the companies I've been involved in, Mirakl is the category leader by a larger margin than I've experienced within any other company. And that makes it, fun because you're operating from a position of strength. The product is, frankly, it's amazing. And I love to tell a story about when I first joined and I went through the holiday period, and I wasn't on any phone calls of customers that were upset. And I was like, why is nobody telling me what's going on? Like, where are the upset customers? And it was because everything was functioning the way that it should. And so, again, these Black Friday numbers that we were talking about earlier are reflective of being able to, have a solution that does what it's designed to do and, frankly, does it pretty flawlessly. So that builds confidence as a sales leader. It builds confidence as somebody that, has a lot of empathy and wants to see all of our customers be successful. And, I think those are kind of the core tenets of what excites me about the future.
Well, I love hearing that. Would you like to know what I'm most excited about with Marketplace?
I would love to.
Well, what excites me most about Marketplace from Mirakl is that you can take a maker who is outstanding at providing their core brand offering. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's shoes. I don't care if it's pants. I don't care if it's toothpaste. But they've got a customer that visits them, that's excited about them. Marketplace gives them the opportunity to give that customer a real journey, an affinity-based journey that they're going to be interested in and that they're going to explore together. And that, I think, is the real magic of Marketplace, is providing that whole experience to that customer based on what they're really interested in.
Well
Anyway,
said.
2 cents.
Yep.
2 cents. Alex, I can't say we've wasted the last 40 minutes.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
It really has. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate what you're doing there, and I'm sure your team really enjoys having you at the helm.
I appreciate that. And maybe we get a chance to do it again. We'll see where we're at in a year's time. How about that?
That sounds great. I will definitely be at NRF, and for all of those retailers and e-commerce vendors listening, we'll see you on the floor.
Take care, Daryl. Thank you.
Over and out.
Thanks for listening to MarTalks, the #1 podcast for e-commerce and marketing applications. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and while you're at it, leave a rating and review. To find out more about how the Rosenstein Group can help you find the right leaders for your client development teams in MarTech and e-commerce, please visit our website at rosensteingroup.com.